Hi, everyone. This is Ed Amoroso again, and I'm here with my friend Jason Bevis, who's the AVP at Awake Labs. And we're going to have a nice discussion here about how organizations can improve network security. And we're going to talk about incident response expertise in humans, how people can get into the equation here. So, Jason, welcome. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I really appreciate you taking the time out today to talk with me.
Jason, start maybe just a little bit about yourself and the work that you do at Awake, and then we'll get into our topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So over at Awake, if you're not familiar, Awake Labs is a division within Arista Networks where we have a professional and managed service team that are highly focused, and we're focused on the aspects of network detection and response as well as emergency incident response. So those two key skills are what I'm going to talk about and really how we use those to help people in the industry today.
So, Jason, people don't just fall into networking. What were you doing before Awake Labs? What were some things you were involved in?
Yeah, I mean, I've been around quite a bit. I've been through a lot of startup companies. I used to be actually a networking individual for a large portion of my career. I've worked at companies like FireEye, McAfee, KPMG, some big names out there, and I've ran professional services teams within those organizations. Up to about 30 to 60 people on each of them.
Well, once you get into network security, it's hard to get out, right? It's a very useful skill. Right.
Absolutely.
Now, Jay, one of the questions I'm sure your customers ask you, and I know I get asked a lot, is, we have all these tools and automation and AI and so on. What is the role of human beings? Like, we still use them. Are we going to continue using them? Seems like we will, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, humans are fundamental today. If you look at AI and you kind of look at how it's used in the industry, if you've got a highly repetitive task, AI is excellent for that. So for example, we've got things like domain reputation, basic what I would call tier one automated analysis, things that we use called frequency analysis of bad traits and things like that. That stuff can all be handled by AI. But, just like we use AI to defend, the attackers use AI and also come up with creative items all the time to figure out how to bypass stuff or try to manipulate the AI itself. So that's why you really do need humans to kind of sort through the gray area at some level. I mean, we can get the AI to tell us this looks good or this looks bad, or maybe even point out this needs investigated. And that's where the combination of the two is really fundamental. And if you look at a networking platform like Awake, it actually helps you find those gray areas where the AI may point you to what needs investigated, but then you really do, just like any other job. I mean, you think about like a police detective or something like that, you really do need the skilled analyst to come in, find out if it's a valid threat, and then also help, dig into deeper things. And then that knowledge goes back to help power and improve the AI over time too. So that's really the state we're at. And you're going to see that's how we kind of use a combination of the two to not only detect common things, but advanced actors and also things that haven't happened in the wild before. So if something hasn't happened, the AI may boil that up to investigate, but sometimes it does take the advanced and skilled actor to really dig in, validate it, and make sure we do understand a new threat.
One thing a lot of people presume, and I've always thought to be true, is that when you look at a networking organization, there are some tasks that are rote, both for administration, also for security. And then there are things that maybe not so rote, and I always thought that the first role of automation is to try to free up the human beings from having to do a lot of the repeatable rote tasks. Is that your philosophy? Like, you think that's the first role of automation, and then if they can do more, great. But am I thinking about that right? That we would try to automate things that are somewhat repetitive?
Yeah, you're on the right track. And just a little background about myself. I used to run SOAR engineering the last year or so when I was at FireEye. So I have a pretty good background in orchestration and automation. We run a whole automation development function over here too. And absolutely, I mean, if you think about like emergency incident response, we're collecting, lots of artifacts back. And then we've got, different rules, things like that maybe use AI to help boil them up. and we really do use the automation and the AI in combination to help speed up the analysis and investigation process. Because you don't want to pay highly skilled and expensive engineers to be doing those repetitive tasks. That's where both the AI and the automation come into play.
Do you find that having these types of tools, automation, so on, help you recruit? Like when you're bringing new staff into a network security organization, do they typically want to know what the tool sets are? I would imagine they would. Like they kind of want to come inspect the tool shed and see what's in there before they would take a job. Curious what your experience has been there.
Yeah, I mean, interviewing processes are interesting. You find all kinds of different things, but we definitely are usually looking for the talent that would ask our tool set, ask our methodologies, because in general, when you get into both networking and then security networking, you want those people that know how to dig and hunt and learn, and they're on this kind of continuous learning cycle. So if they're asking about our tool set, also some of it is how much will we tell them during an interview. But that right there kind of gives you the mindset that they're the type of investigator, the digger, the hunter into like knowledge and to also solving problems. So I do think it's a good trait for people to ask when they're interviewing.
Has it been difficult finding people like to do network security? You guys are close to this industry, right in the middle of it. What are teams finding when they're out looking for expertise to do network security?
Yeah, it's a challenge, especially forensics in network. I mean, we constantly have recs open and are hiring. And if you just look at the forensics itself within the industry, it's pretty limited skill set. Then you break it down to the niche of understanding networking forensics. It even becomes a smaller tier. I can tell you over here, we know that we're producing a lot of the content that even exists out there for networking security, because it's just very different when you start to put analytical thought and human hunting over the top of it. But one of the challenges we've really ran into with recruiting is your typical SOC analyst is really somebody who just reviews logs all day. They're not really a threat hunter. And when we look at that, I almost phrased this back in the day, I would have called this alert management, but we've taken the term of threat hunting today, and we've essentially rebranded alert management to threat hunting, which means I get an alert and I'm investigating that. That's not necessarily threat hunting. So our challenge has really been, can we find people who are good at hunting threats and not just somebody who's been looking at logs coming in all day? Because as we've hired, we found that it's not necessarily the right mindset to dig in and look at things. So we're looking for people who spend their own time doing different projects, hobbies, things like that show they really like to dig and learn and are curious, and those end up being good hunters in the environments for threats.
I would imagine that a lot of organizations, when they can't find those good people who understand that stuff, probably turn to managed service providers for managed network security, or to vendors. Do you see that? I'm curious, when people do make that decision, what are some things they should think about when they want to augment their capability?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll break it down. I mean, you've got a lot of organizations can't even afford somebody that does forensics, let alone network forensics. Okay, that's part of it. And then find the skill set is more difficult. And then you may have a very large global enterprise of 200K individuals that has 100 threat hunters at different levels. Okay, the difference is that they may be hunting also different in some levels, and they may have managed portions of their solution outsourced, such as their endpoint or their network managed services. So in Awake, in Awake Labs, we do have a managed network detection and response service, and our customers have found it very valuable. We've got from all different tiers too. We've got some smaller orgs that they really couldn't afford the staffing and items like that, and now they have a very highly focused team of experts looking at threats at the network level where they never did. And then they also have capability to extend into emergency response if we detected it, so we could go in, help them contain it, help them remediate. And then on the other end of the scale, we've got some global organizations that, multiple continents, lots of individuals there, lots of data traveling through, and they've essentially outsourced multiple providers. And they kind of consider it a defense in depth, where they have their own SOC, They have different providers performing different functions. And the real key there is being able to, as a managed service provider, be able to work with other outsourced groups, MSSPs, as well as your customer, and help them provide a seamless team and offset the skill set that neither of them have. And that's where, Arista and Awake Labs has really done a great job as a solution.
I'm so glad to hear that smaller companies are using this as well, because I think we all know that the day of thinking that only big companies get targeted, that's long since passed. Unfortunately, it's kind of bad news for small businesses, but and sadly, they don't get a pass. So it's good to hear that that's a big part of your business. I would imagine you probably work across every sector. I'm trying to think if there's a sector where this wouldn't be applicable. You really do span just about every type of business. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We're pretty much across every industry. Every industry has its own unique challenges too. Healthcare is a great one where the network is phenomenal, and I'll tell you why. You can't install an endpoint on a CAT scan machine. Okay, it just doesn't really exist today. They've got lots of small devices, lots of things like that that can be put into the network, or that may even been by a rogue manufacturer, things like that we picked up. One example, we picked up laundry machines with open tunnels out to the internet that let them into the entire network. Okay, and then on another scale, you've got someone like in the auto industry, again, unique setup where there's just so much value into bridging both, protected and unmanaged networks. And that's a great offset where we ran into an example recently where the endpoint had picked up a threat, contained it on certain hosts, but then it had actually got off onto other systems that couldn't install an endpoint, and they compromised the credentials. The endpoint team didn't pick it up because they had valid credentials, and it turned out they had over 50 compromised hosts in the environment. We immediately jumped in the emergency response, and within a short period of time helped them contain the problem.
Well, I'm glad you were there. So, well, Jason, it's been an absolute delight catching up with you. Your information very useful. I'm sure people appreciate your experience, and thanks so much for sharing such good advice.
No, thank you, Ed, and I really appreciate you giving us the time today. It's been a pleasure to be on and let everybody know what we do over here at Arista Networks within the Awake Labs team. Thanks.
Very good. And thank you all for watching.